March 25th of 2025. This is the Stoughton City Council meeting, and the first order of business would be the roll call.
Okay, Jensen.
Here.
Peyton. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me, he's not on yet. Caravello.
Here.
Sherlucky.
Here.
Abel.
Here.
Schumacher.
Here.
Mayeski.
Here.
Butler.
Here.
Lagaki.
Here.
Wozniak Scanlon. Here. We have 9 alders present.
All right, thank you. We are certified of compliance with open meeting laws, and that takes us to public comment. We do have one person signed up to speak. Buck Sweeney is here tonight. Buck, you can just push the button there. The red light will come on.
Yep, I think I got it.
Adjust the mic, and you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm just here tonight. We want to be and continue to work with the city attorneys and the Parks Department. We want to say thank you for getting the financial information that we got regarding the cost of the Whitewater Park. We've also, as a group, Rob Montgomery, who's he's an engineer and hydrogeologist. He and I are continuing to work with DNR regarding some of the permit issues that we think are still a challenge for the city because of the drawdown of the water. There's different opinions regarding that, but we think we have some pretty good data that shows that the water will draw down and will cause some problems with not only loss of property values for people, but also exposed sediment. And it's my understanding that the sediment, the contaminated sediment that's in the bidding is the ones that you'll encounter based upon your plan. But if the water goes down significantly, there's going to be exposed sediment on the banks of that water. And I've been doing environmental law for 40 years, and I think the cost, and the concern I have is the cost of that could be in the millions of dollars. And the city really, that's a lot of money to have to pay if they open up a can of worms like that. So we have significant concerns, and we're bringing those up at DNR, and we'll bring those up at the water permit. But we're trying to be transparent. We have a lot of people who are against that, and we want to try to work with the city and continue to work with the Parks Department to see if we can find a better idea that everyone would agree to. We do like the trails. We'd like to, to develop the stream and the Yahara River. We think those are real good ideas. But just wanted to continue to try to work with the park departments and the city attorneys and work together on the permitting issues. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you.
Excuse me, Mayor. I'm wondering if we could have that gentleman actually, I got his name, but I didn't get any other information about him, or if he's a Stoughton resident or not, or who he represents. Or is that listed somewhere?
I think we have his address on file.
I can address that.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm an attorney with Axley Law. I work out of the Janesville office, and I represent a group of thousands of people that have signed petitions that are opposed to the Whitewater Park because of the hydrogeological data we had. It would only be used for the water volume 3 days on the last year. So we don't think it's a good investment. Thank you.
You are not a Stoughton resident?
I live in Pleasant Springs, so I'm in the greater Stoughton community, but I do not live in the city of Stoughton. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next item is communications and presentations. Any communications from alders? All right, any communication from the clerk? I like putting Candy on the spot.
That's okay. We're busy issuing in-person absentee ballots. To date, we've issued 475 in-person over the last 6 days. At this point, we have mailed out 1,350 ballots and have returned 101 ballots from the care facilities. So each day continues to grow in regards to in-person absentee voting. So we're ready for April 1st.
All right, any questions for the clerk? Okay, and no other communications from alders. Introduction of historical facts.
All right, we have a couple more. We're kind of continuing on from the previous meeting. I ended there in 1953, so we're going to go into 1954. The council had approved a bid for $35,000 for the Fortin Street Bridge. So if you want to know when that came into be, 1954. In 1955, the council also created the first tree commission. In 1965, the council voted to annex the Boland property. And in 1967, if you remember the Dutch elm disease, there was a contract signed for spraying of the elm trees, but it was probably a bit too late for them, like the emerald ash borer too. So then continuing on through the 70s, there was quite a number of annexations of property into Stoughton City, which probably had a good deal to do with the population growth between 1970 and 1980 census of 24.5%. And those are what I have.
All right, thank you. Any questions about any of the history? You are a history buff. All right, we have a couple of presentations. The first one is coming from Hayden, is it Thacker? Yep. All right, and this is in regards to the municipal power plant known as the powerhouse or the pump house. Director Aber has been working with him. Director Aber will do the introduction while I cue this up. We did send out the full analysis, I think a couple weeks ago, and it's also in your packet, as well as we added the slide presentation in there today. Go ahead, Director Aber.
Yeah, so we have Edward Hayden here with us from Hayden.
Red light means go. Oh, red is go. Oh my goodness. Okay, I thought blue was go. All right, I apologize for that. So I have Edward Hayden here with us from Hayden Thacker, and we commissioned a report from them to study the powerhouse, to take a look at the deficiencies of the powerhouse, and also to give us an opinion of probable cost to make those repairs. And so Edward's here tonight with us, and he's going to go through a PowerPoint and then answer any of your questions that you may have. Edward?
Thank you for inviting me to make this presentation tonight. Do I need to announce my address? No, I am not from the city of Stoughton. Okay, so Stoughton Municipal Power Plant number 1. We were hired to evaluate this building initially for some repairs, and then secondarily to identify what this building major deficiencies are. And just as a brief introduction, you probably all know about the power plant. It was constructed in 1911 as your source of power off of the raceway. And the drawings that we have indicated that there might have been an addition planned in around 1934. And I've tried to show you that concept here with the blueprint kind of grayed out on the left-hand side, but really it was the power plant from 1911 that still exists today. Next slide, please. These slides are just to encourage you to take a look at it one more time. It obviously is a beautiful building of Italianate design qualities, but it is actually in pretty poor shape. So we've been through here multiple times, and you can kind of see with these photos, and if you visit it yourself, you know, there's some graffiti inside, there's graffiti outside. I'll bring to your attention some of the repairs, but for all practical purposes, it's not a habitable building without major renovation and work. You can continue with the slides here because they just kind of go around the building. This slide in particular, on the right-hand side, you'll see where the wall is showing some cracking along the masonry. This building's really just designed as a steel frame loaded up on a masonry wall. And that masonry wall in particular is starting to show some of the wear and tear of the wear and tear over time on this building. So we can continue here. go around the back. You can see where the raceway comes out. You know, what the raceway did was spun 2 generators inside and helped produce power for the building, and this is the outlet. One thing that you'll always have while this raceway is in place is you'll have consistent exposure to humidity and damp. And that'll always be an issue that you'll have to deal with until you abandon the raceway and have this filled in. So that'll be something that you'll fight continually over time. Even so much that the current basement is, does it still contain water?
Yeah, we pump it down periodically, but it does hold water.
So I've done a couple sectional studies on what I think is going on here, but primarily I believe it's spring or groundwater that's coming up through that, just because of the clarity of that, clarity of the water that's in place. So we can continue on. This is my favorite elevation here. This is the 4th Street elevation. I think it would be of a very beautiful prominence when it's returned to its stature, but of primary beauty is that little cross or star that's up in the gable end there, or the arch there. So again, just being the architect here, this would be the one that I think everybody would appreciate the most if it's returned to its one of its original states, but I drew your attention to this in particular. This is your roof on the building, and the roof is actually the condition of the roof is actually the cause of all your concerns as far as that wall cracking in the upper right-hand corner, and I'll bring your attention to this later. The wall and the roof form is pulling apart, and stormwater drains down this roof structure, collects in the gutter, and then deposits in the inside of the building. And then as it runs down the inside of the wall, what it does is it consolidates the earth below it, and the loading of the soil loses its compressive strength, and then the wall starts to pull away. So that's really the big issue here. These tiles, though, if you go to the next one here, I believe I have identified this. This is of particular interest because these tiles are large format concrete tiles. And because this building was an industrial building, they really didn't put a ceiling in here, and they really didn't bother with any type of insulation back in 1911. If any of you have an old house, you know that that's the case too. But they would just lay these clay tiles, or sorry, these concrete tiles, which were manufactured in Chicago, on top of the steel structure. So they just sit up there in place. They are no longer made, but you have 3 or 4 of them in the basement. Before you go on to the next one, can you just drop back down to the ceiling or the roof photograph here? The roof is originally of a reddish orange color. That's what you see on this photo. At some time period between when it was constructed and now, someone applied like a silver elastomeric coating on there to prevent some of that water going in there, probably because you're using it as storage. But that's that gray that you see on there is a coating that has deteriorated over time and gone back to the clay tile. Okay, you can continue through. So this is a highlight of the deteriorating wall, and I took a close-up of the tile up on top. And then on the inside of the building, the lower left corner, you can kind of see the daylight peeking through. And if I had a laser pointer, I'd point right at it, but it's that little slot of light that's coming in. So that's where we're bringing all the water in from the roof. And to the left of that daylight slot is a gutter that goes to a downspout that is currently functioning. It just dumps it right down in the raceway. But this would be the cause of all the kind of consternation going on with that exterior wall, and that wall starting to deteriorate. Our original agreement with the city was to provide some evaluation on this exterior wall, and an inspection on these roof tiles. And so we had put together a document that could be used to bid some remediation. So it's a pretty thorough document. It would get you just into the area of containing that runoff coming off that roof. And then there was some opportunity to provide a test pit to understand what's going on underneath that wall, so that we were able to come up with a pier design so that you could retain and hold that wall in place while you figured out what you were going to do with this project. Next slide, please. This is my engineer's design. It's really just 6 or 7 piles driven below the foundation and then held in place. Yep, correct. And once we stabilize that wall, and he's kind of showing an overturning wall there, but I don't believe it's that aggressive. I think this is more of a diagram. But once we establish or settle up with that exterior wall and we handle the roof water, we'd come back and we recommend to tuck point the exterior of the building there. And so that would be a pretty straightforward masonry project. Part of this was to come up with a period of significance for this building. And when you speak of historic buildings and evaluating what your next steps are, you, as the owner, get to establish what the period of significance is that you want this reviewed as. So your period of significance could be as recently as last week or original building. So we've evaluated these. We evaluated the documents that were provided to us and kind of picked a nice middle of the road period of significance, and we've detailed that in these drawings here around the building. And so the front of the building, the east side of the building, the west side of the building, and then the south side of the building will be on the next page. Actually, it's the upper right-hand corner. Sorry about that. So you can see the arch windows are on the primary elevations. The east elevation would be retained, and then the south elevation over the race really was more of a utilitarian elevation in the original, and it would be wise to try to maintain that so that any future user could have quote unquote a back of house without windows in it, right? And that's where I'd try to give them the most flexibility if we had a client that was moving in on this.
I just have a quick question.
Yes,
so
sir.
the period of significance, is that something from the secretary or exterior?
Well, it would be
Where
something
does
that when
come
you,
from?
sorry about that, sorry for speaking over you. A period of significance is something that you would choose as a client to use to submit to the State Historic Preservation Office so that they could evaluate your alterations against the period. Okay. And they take the highlights of things and they'll try to coach you into what they would like to see. For instance, the clay roof on this building is a significant element, and we've kind of addressed that in our report. They wouldn't allow us to put shingles up there. I did ask them very directly. I said, they don't make these clay tiles anymore. So, we kind of came to some understanding of how far they would let us push them. But this period of significance, I chose 1911 because it was the original. The 1934 drawings, I don't believe were ever executed. And they had taken this original design and then added a little more classical window fenestration. If you took a look at that original blueprint that we opened up with, you would see that these are the more what we would consider was in place to begin with, and then not the enhanced set of windows. I think you'd have a hard time expressing the fact that you want an enhanced set of windows to follow the guidelines of the Secretary of the Interior. Needless to say, we've popped the arches open on this and tried to accentuate what an important building this might be, particularly to a user.
Okay. And then one other question, as
Yes,
long
sir.
as we have this slide up. So the back part, what direction is that?
The back part is the part that's over the race.
Okay.
That would be the north side. I have my directions It's turned
Okay.
around here. So the north facade, excuse me, the north facade is the facade that's over the race.
Okay.
And in the original drawings, they didn't have the arches glazed. They had them infilled with masonry. And so that's really the kind of image that we brought around. And I think that gives you a lot of flexibility if you have a user set up for this, whether it's a commercial or a restaurant type. These areas need like a back of house to prepare and distribute. And sometimes with all these expensive windows, that sets people back. But up front, it makes sense.
Okay. Thank you for that. Anybody else have any questions on this slide? All right.
Anyone can jump in at any time on this. And then we put together an opinion of cost to restore this building. And the idea was to stabilize the exterior and bring it back to the period of significance, but provide flexibility for a potential user to determine how they were going to illuminate, heat, and cool what this building might be. Just to get you back to base here, we're over $700,000. It's a pretty high cost per square foot, but you have a pretty derelict kind of setup here, and there's still things that are undiscovered there. As far as tearing the roof off or exposing any other underground issues. Okay. But again, this is pretty much an opinion of ours, and I think it comes from a pretty good spot. We're pretty qualified for this to give you some guidance.
So you mentioned they don't make the cement roof tiles anymore.
Yeah.
So what would you do?
Well, my presumptions were that they would want a clay tile back up there.
So they were clay originally, and then they went to cement, or
no, they're originally cement, but they would want something that would replicate that feature.
Okay.
And the roof covering. We took some liberties because with the steel structure there's really nothing between where you stand and the bottom of those tiles, right? And those tiles, if you pulled them off, you're going to see daylight. And that would be an ideal spot to bring back some new form of construction, maybe to help consolidate the lateral on those steel trusses, bring in some potential insulation on this building, and then introduce clay or concrete tile back up there of a smaller format. And so if you had a custom tile made, and I don't think you can go to market to find these tiles, but you can have them made, at a cost. You'd have a clay factory make it or a concrete factory make it for tiles. But more likely you would buy a larger format concrete tile that you would maybe put on a house or a commercial building, and then kind of replicate that image up there of tiles.
And what would the lifespan of those be if you replaced them and sealed everything up properly?
I would say you get a good 100 years out of a clay tile roof or a concrete tile roof. I mean, here we are sitting in 2025, and these were installed in 1911, and even through just not being maintained, they're still up there, And there's a possibility that if you took these clay tiles off during deconstruction and kind of didn't break them up, and you could stack them up and reuse them and evaluate them, you might be able to tooth in new ones, that were custom built for this. But and I would say the State Historic Preservation Office would love you for that if they were worth it. But we haven't been up there to determine that, right? We haven't climbed up there and knocked those tiles around, but they're pretty heavy. They're 2 inches thick by 30 by 42 inch. They're pretty large and pretty thick, reinforced with steel. So, there might be some possibility of picking that apart and putting that back in, but at that point, you probably would have to develop some type of, modern subroof up there and rubber it up, and then put these up there as kind of a decorative quality. So much like every type of clay roof, it really relies on its underlayment to perform, right? And the clay tile takes the majority of the moisture, but you usually put a adhered rubber roof underneath something like that and put these up on, standards or, however that is up there.
Thank you.
And that's the end.
Oh.
Yeah, I just was this was going to be where I could put the questions, but we kind of had them
I
coming
couldn't
through.
wait. I
What's
just
that?
had to know.
Oh, yeah, that's all right. So, it's an interesting building, and the benefit of historic buildings is being able to access historic tax credits for renovation. And as far as I understand, the historic tax credits, municipalities don't qualify for tax credits because they're a non-taxing entity or not a taxing property. And so, historically, we see these buildings, sold at a discount, but under some type of developer agreement that they use these tax credits to bring this back on.
Okay.
So,
Alderperson Legaki has a question.
I'm a member of the
Hi.
Landmarks Commission.
How are you?
And thank you very much for this presentation. There's no mention in the longer report of this being a local historic landmark. And do you know that if it is a local historic landmark, do you want to append or change, or is it true that, wow, it's just this old municipal building? Could the fact that it has that status, would that possibly change being historic credits being available?
well, historic credits are available for a project like this because it is listed on the national and the state. And had I overlooked the local landmark status, I apologize for that shortcoming, and we will amend the.
I'm guessing you weren't told and we weren't consulted, and no worries.
Okay.
We would love to talk to you about your report, even if you would want to attend the next meeting. Even our current chair of the Landmarks Commission is here.
Okay.
But we have some particular things, and if I could ask.
Yes, please.
A citizen and a member of the Landmarks Commission asked me about that report that the mayor put out a few weeks ago. And again, just wanting it mentioned in key places, pages 4 and 5, that it's a local landmark. But this is germane on page 11, where it talks about alterations, rehabilitations, and replacement plans that require submission to SHPO, the Wisconsin State Historic Preservation Office, for review and final approvals. And that is the statement that is in your longer report. And I just want to lend commentary because it's about the rehabilitation as we consider this. That's only partly correct. There is a little bit more, which I think that you are alluding to, but you didn't have the status of being a local historic landmark. It's required that it go in front of the Landmark Commission for any exterior work to the building and any work on its site. And this should be listed above in the SHPO review in that report. Perhaps something like exterior alterations, rehabilitation, and replacement plans and alterations to the site require submission to the Stoughton Landmarks Commission for review and approvals. And just wanted to make that point and say that this is an important building at all kinds of levels, and I know we've even put money out to try to talk about how will we keep it up over time, and I don't think we quite got there. So I'm trying to make sure that we're putting all of the right entities together in this project, and I wondered, would that be an incentive or open up doors for rehabilitation cost?
So most of the funding, supportive funding in the equity stack for historic preservation comes from the federal government through an application by a private entity. And the additional requirements of the Landmark Historic Commission here would play into the authority that oversees the alterations, right? So before the alterations could even occur, and even before the submission, I believe, for the federal tax credits, there would have to be a statement from the local preservation community that supports that or does not support that, right? I mean, I couldn't come in and paint it white and, put a wing stop in there. Not that I don't need a wing stop, but I mean, I would have to at least abide by the municipal. I'm trying to pick the worst thing possible here.
Yeah, I think what would happen is whoever would, whether it's a city or a private, the landmarks has a certificate of appropriateness.
Correct.
COA, that they go through that process, and they have design guidelines that may or may not be consistent with SHPOs, basically. I don't know the difference between them well enough to say this building would or would not be exactly the same as SHPOs. But we would want whoever would do the work on that building, as you mentioned, we go through and have that submittal looked at ahead of time, as well as with SHPO to make sure that they would qualify for the historic tax credits if it was a private. If it's us, we would still have to go through the process. We just wouldn't be able to enjoy the tax credits. So I think that's what you're referencing there. It's a good point because they would need to be reviewed by both would be my understanding.
Well, that's a good point because in the preliminary work that we did for the city for remediation, we did have a review at the SHPO. And that was really just to impress upon the fact that we were going to remove the asbestos from the inside and remove the storage that's going on in there and kind of clean it up and stabilize it. But the reality is we were trying to perform just a little bit of triage on that building so that it would buy you time to make a decision on what your intentions were, whether to retain this and reconstruct it or make other decisions. And it really was the whole goal, I think, of the Public Works Department was just to stabilize this in position. And I would argue that if you don't stabilize this, that you're on borrowed time currently, and that if you without tripping over any of the things that would get in the way of a full-blown renovation, there are some triage-like elements, including that gutter and somehow reforming that roof so you don't have rainwater washing down the inside of that building, and then reconsolidating the ground below it, and then having that wall continue in its failure mode. Right. So I can appreciate the path that it takes to get these buildings through a preservation community or preservation entity. I would argue that you would love our drawings. We tried to be as true to the original as we possibly could, and it seems very viable. Whether the fenestration goes back to steel or there are modern ways to handle that with aluminum, but you focus on the door and some of the finer details and get the building, tuck pointed up and ready to go. That'd be a great feather in your cap.
Did you have any follow-up questions, Alder Lagaki?
No, thank you. Sorry, my mic is on.
Oh, but I will follow up with you to make sure that we get some of that language in here because, that was really a preliminary kind of.
Absolutely. I'll be happy to, I had a problem with my email migration, but it's solved now. I'll be happy to get that to the mayor and or directly to you, however that makes sense.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Alderperson Abel.
I just wanted to clarify to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So your construction cost of $771,000, that's just to triage and get it back to not even like a functional state, but just a
it's
shell. Thank
yeah,
you.
Yeah, it's not triage. Triage was what we originally came in for, hey, let's prevent this from happening. This is to stabilize the exterior and hit the checkpoints for a historic building. So that would be if I were to want to purchase this building, I would have to take that into consideration, right? I would have an architect look at this and tell me what the numbers are, and we would figure something out. And then whatever my use was, whether it was a bakery or a brewery or a dance club hall, I mean, all those things are different uses for different mechanical, right? So you don't have any power in there right now. You don't have any plumbing in there right now. You don't have any heat or cooling in there right now. So that would be left, that's not included in this. So it really is just to stabilize this building, get it weather tight, get it to pass the historic qualifications, and then be ready for whatever its next life is going to be.
Anybody else have any questions? I don't know
Bring
if
'em
I
on.
want to open that can of worms. Go ahead, Chris.
I just wanted to bring this to everyone's attention too. So at this time, it falls under DNR jurisdiction. Sound like a broken record, but it does. And this is not including building permits, state-approved plans, because it's a commercial building, and the zoning permit, and so on. So like there's all of those layers that it still has to meet, besides just historical and not falling into the water. So.
And I would just add, we did share the report with a distillery that's interested in the building, so they could do their due diligence as well. And I think they're, researching, the historical preservation part of it, and then trying to understand, functionally how they could hopefully utilize that building as part of their operation. They're looking at purchasing the building across the street for the production. This would be more like a tap room, which we think could be a good use. I just had two quick ones, and I'll let you speak, Brett. One is, how urgent is this? Do we have to have this roof done like in the next 6 months or else, or? Because
that is a good
waiting
question.
as Chris mentioned, Director Pritchard mentioned, we need the DNR to facilitate some things so we can get the fill, which I think is going to help stabilize as well from the water that's going underneath. We're going through the permitting process. I don't know if you, Director Aber, have talked about that at all, and it's been a process. Let's just leave it at that. So the urgency is one, and then does your firm actually perform the work, or would you have a list of resources that we would use to do the work?
I'll address the first one. Your primary immediacy is to prevent the water from coming in. I think that is category number one, and if I walked away not impressing that upon you, then I think that's a dereliction of duty here. The wall is going to fail if you don't stop the water from undermining its foundation. So once you stop that water, you probably buy yourself a little more time while you figure things out.
So do you see something, maybe we throw something on top of it temporarily to help sheet the water off until we can go forward with the rest of the work, or?
I would think that and I haven't been in there in the rain, I might have to evaluate it then, but the way that we approached it in the original concept was to have someone come in and reform that gutter that it sits in, right? That gutter is blown out and it's rotted out. And, currently most of that rainwater on the north and south side of that slope gets taken into a gutter, which gets taken into a conductor and gets taken down to the river, right? It was just the way it's always been. But the fact that that area has disintegrated, that gutter is disintegrated, someone with some sheet metal skill could get back up in there and probably contain the majority of that water over time, right? It isn't pulling that whole roof apart, but we did have on the drawings, an area where you would pull back the roofing and try to replace the flashing that would come back in onto the built-in gutter that's up against the parapet. So that's really the true triage there. And then you would monitor that wall to determine how soon that's going to go. But it's really, once you stabilize the roof water, you're the majority of the way there.
Okay. And then as far as the work, do you perform work, or are you
Well, we don't do construction work. We're not contractors. I always joke that my mom dropped me on my head, so that's why I'm an architect. They wouldn't trust me with a hammer anyways. But, you know, there are resources in the community that can do that. There are qualified contractors. They always work from architects' plans. You know, that's where we come in. You know, we try to be the intermediary between the ideas and the entitlements and the budget. You know, so. But when push came to shove, we'd have some recommendations.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll let Brett wrap it up here.
Just a few things. So we would work with Edward and Hayden Thacker, and they would actually put together the specifications and the bid documents, which we already have started to do actually. We wanted to bring this to you guys as a step one. We certainly aren't trying to circumvent the landmarks. This is really a step one to see what we have structurally for the building so that we can, you know, make it stand up, and then we can go ahead and go forward with any remediations that have to happen along with the landmarks in step. The other thing I wanted to add is that the environmental has already been done. So all the lead, asbestos, and mold, all the storage materials have all been removed. It's actually pretty clean inside there right now.
It's really nice.
It really is, to be honest, you know, looking at what it looked like before to now. So that's already good to go. I think the first step, again, was to bring this before you. You can digest this. We do have some money in the capital budget to do some things. We need to figure out what that looks like, and I guess that's for further discussion.
All right. Thank you both for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Next presentation, and he said it would be a quick one, is from Police Chief Jenks regarding school resource officer conversations he's been having with the Stoughton Area School District.
Thank you, Mayor Swadley. Just wanted to get ahead of some communications I've been having with the school. We've talked about it, public safety, and I know, Mayor, you've brought it before the alders briefly, that we have been in communications with the school in regards to restoring the SRO position. I just wanted to provide an update. We're getting a lot of feedback from school staff as well as our own, and starting to shape what eventually will become a contract centered around the SRO's duties, which include everything from their dress to their assignment to which schools, and cost sharing is where it'll be interesting for everyone. I just want to share, like, during our restructure from 2022, we identified that in the past, from 2013 to 2020, the SRO didn't have like a direct supervisor. We created the detective sergeant position, thinking that with the sensitive crimes and investigations that happen at a school occasionally, that would be someone in that position would be worth overseeing it and helping guide the SRO along in those investigations. The school has recognized that there was kind of a lack of communications, so their plan is to also establish, much like my detective sergeant, a point of contact so we can have those direct conversations and not lose any of our plans or what's going on between the school and the police department, as the SRO serves in that liaison position. I anticipate this process to move relatively quickly. I met with Superintendent Keyser just 2 weeks ago, kind of forming the bones of a contract. We looked at what our area PDs offer, with the cost sharing, the totality of the job duties, and started to come up with some rough ideas. Of course, they're on spring break this week, but I anticipate it'll pick up and move through committees and hopefully end up here for this audience.
All right, thank you for being here. This will probably be some sort of a future agenda item, or maybe we can dive into the details a little bit more once you get an outline of the agreement.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you so much.
All right, we'll see you Wednesday night.
Yep.
Okay, that takes us to our consent agenda. There's a number of items in there. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Okay, I had a motion by Wozniak Scanlon. Is there a second?
Second.
Who was that? Second by Sherlucky. Would anybody like anything acted on separately from the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed, that motion carries. We have a few ordinances that are coming from the Plan Commission for second readings, and I'll cue this up for Alderperson Caravello. And first one is ordinance 7.
I believe
Maybe the
that's,
first one is ordinance.
Oh,
No, there's something.
I'm sorry. I skipped this one.
Yeah.
This one here is ordinance 7 of 2025, and this is for special events. So this is one that staff has been working on, and I want to say it might have been discussed at Park and Rec. I think Tony made mention of it there. Is this something that you worked on at all, Rick, or?
Yeah, so as we explained at the last meeting, the city requires a special event permit for special events within like public areas, like streets, parks, things like that. It also requires a special event permit that's on private property if the organization gets a temporary beer license. So this would be removing the special event requirement for events on private property. They would still need if they're selling alcohol, they still need a temporary beer license. But the thinking from staff at least was this, the fact that it's on private property and they're getting a beer license or an alcohol license, it's gone through the appropriate reviews.
All right, any questions? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion on this one. Huh?
Or do we have it move forward? I don't think we have it move forward.
Right, I'm looking for a motion for ordinance 7.
I'll make a motion for ordinance 7, 2025.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Butler. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Next one is ordinance 8. This one came from Public Safety. Alderperson Jensen.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ordinance 8, 2025, amending section 70-135, reserved EMS, City Hall, Public Safety Building, and Senior Center parking. And I would move for approval.
Is there a second? Second. Second by, what was that over there? Wozniak Scanlon, all right. Alderperson Jensen?
Yeah, I was looking to just basically put signage up for areas that initially I believe it was just on City Hall, but we wanted to expand that to cover the other public buildings. I believe, if I remember correctly, we are already utilizing this as for employee only.
That is correct.
I'm trying to stretch through my memory here on this. What, a couple of weeks ago now? It's almost a month ago. Yeah. Anyways, the pictures are in there, showing what the areas that would be covered.
All right. Are there any questions or comments on this one? They're all good? All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And then any opposed? That motion carries. All right. The next one is ordinance 9 of 2025. This one had gone through landmarks and the Plan Commission. Alderperson Caravello.
And this is ordinance 9 of 2025, repealing zoning code section 78-517 Downtown Design Overlay District of the Stoughton Municipal Code, and I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Legaki. Alderperson Caravello.
And this, as discussed at our last meeting, and as you can see, this is striking all of this. So hence all of the red lines, and this just removes conflicts in our code with landmarks.
All right. Any questions or comments on this one? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. Now we're in the new business, and we have some first readings. And the first one is Ordinance 10 of 2025, and that one actually went through CACP, so that would be Alderperson Sherlucky. Or Legaki.
I can do it if you want. She's
Legaki.
the chair.
Go for it. I was not at the last meeting.
Oh, okay.
So this is Ordinance 10 of 2025, creating Section 232 of the Stoughton Municipal Code relating to establishing a student representative on the City Council. As this is a first reading, I suppose I don't need to move to approve. So essentially what this is we've laid out certain criteria that we believe would be applicable to a student representative on our council. If you have any questions, we can talk about it.
All right. Did you want to add something, Alder Legaki?
I'd just like to highlight that it's involving the student council, which is smart thinking on our part that developed. I read through that this time, and I like that we're involving that group to try to help bring forth a candidate.
All right, and I think this came up from President Schumacher.
Yep, I'm particularly happy to see this. I always thought, while serving on the school board, also we had our student representative always in there, and it's all been a thought of mine to get that same representation, because I know not only are they interested in what their school involvement is and that, but there are, they're also aspiring government people as well. So to continue their interest and their learning with that, it would be nice to have them involved in this process. That way they can see how glamorous it is.
Glamorous, okay. So this one was at CACP, and then they gave me some language to tweak. I ran it past the city attorney. He put his seal of approval on it. So if you have any questions between now and the next council meeting, send them my ways. But we tried to model it after the school district's policy for their student rep as well. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next one, and that is also first reading from the Plan Commission. This would be Alderperson Caravello.
This is Ordinance 11 of 20. Sorry. This is Ordinance 11 of 2025. Ordinance adding Section 10-4, building permit fees, Section 10-15, reserved permit lapses, and Sections 10-16, revocation of permits. And this is a first reading.
All right. Anything you want to cover, or do you want to have Director Munns-Pritchard take a stab at it?
If Director Munns-Pritchard would care to enlighten us, that would be fabulous.
So, in Caravello's defense, I think I threw like 5 of these at the last Plan Commission meeting at them. So this one is essentially looking at extending building permits and so they don't have to reapply and doing that kind of stuff with it. It was something that was requested by our building inspector, and then I did send it to Rick. He looked over it, so it's just expanding on that so that if the permit lapses, essentially they don't have to come in and fill out a brand new permit. It can be extended. So it's just the course of avenue there.
All right. Any questions on this one? Otherwise, we'll see this at the next meeting. We'll move on to the next one, Alderperson Caravello.
And this one, although in the box at the top of this one also says it is ordinance 11 of 2025. So I think we need something fixed there, because this one should, I mean, I'm guessing
Like
it
the
should
last
be
one.
actually ordinance 12 of 2025.
Yeah, we'll get those numbered for the next meeting.
Just to fix that one. So this is amending section 10-2 of the Stoughton Municipal Code relating to the building regulations and construction standards. And again, this is a first reading. And if Director Munns Pritchard would like to take it.
This is even more exciting than the last one. All it is updating SPS numbers, and you can see it's been striked. That's all it is. It's just, there's not, sorry, it's not that much more exciting. It's just updating. It's just updating to changes in code at the state level.
All right. And then any questions on that one? We'll move on to the next one.
And this is R36 of 2025, approving a conditional use permit for a commercial indoor lodging located at 144 East Main Street. And I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Wozniak-Scanlon. Alderperson Caravello.
And as it reads, the current owners of this location would like to add a indoor lodging location to the upstairs, the second floor of this building on Main Street.
All right. And this one here was at the Plan Commission, and on these conditional uses, I'll let City Attorney remind us about how that process works.
Sure. So basically, conditional use permits since 2017, the state legislature has sort of created a framework that you have to evaluate conditional use permits through. So you can apply standards that are to the extent practicable, measurable. If the application is supported by substantial evidence, you are required to approve it. But if there is substantial evidence in support of denying it, you could consider that. But if the applicant meets or agrees to meet all of the conditions in the conditional use permit, again, state law would presume that the permit would be approved. I believe there was a public hearing at Plan Commission. I don't know if anybody spoke out against it or if So basically, the evidence has been submitted in this case regarding the conditional use permit. So it's, if the decision were to be to deny it, we have to put some sort of reasoning on the record and say what evidence in support of denial.
All right. Any questions about any of that? Alderperson Legacki.
I'm all for more lodging downtown. I think it's a great idea, and it continues. I know that helps us with some of our planning. But just out of curiosity, I don't know if the owners of the building had a discussion, but they're referring to a commercial living unit, and it just made me wonder the way it was written in this. Are they thinking like they're talking about inns and it having an attached bathroom? Is it going to be like, just out of curiosity, more of a bed and breakfast or more of a Airbnb, like a whole unit, or can anybody just?
The upstairs would be more like an Airbnb or a short-term rental. The difference is a bed and breakfast, I believe you have to live on site.
So what I did with this review process, and we actually are talking about expanding our ordinance to address Airbnbs, but the downtown district, oh man, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name, but it's the B one, and it's like a couple down from here. They actually had a conditional use permit for
Bees on Main.
Bees on Main.
Thank you. It was Bees on Main. They actually had a conditional use permit for their Airbnb that's on the second floor. So I used that as the bar. And so then I went in and used that language, wrote up the conditional use permit for it, and that's what you guys are essentially approving. So it is so commercial on the first floor, residential on the second, but the residential is an Airbnb, it's falling under inn. So, but we are looking into addressing this, because it's going to keep coming up, and it'd be nice to apply it the same across the board to everybody. So
And we're also looking at trying to maintain the commercial on the first floor as well, so that'll probably be a separate action that the Plan Commission will look at as well.
One of the things that the next thing that I'm looking at, so I'm rewriting our entire ordinance, because, why not? So commercial business is the next one, and I actually have it redlined. Rick's really excited to read over it. He can't wait. So, yeah. So, and we're very fortunate. Nick, the zoning administrator, came from an area that had something like 400 wineries within X amount of miles of his place. So the Airbnb was like a real thing there, and so they really regulated it. So, yeah.
All right. Any questions on this one? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 And any opposed? That motion carries. Next one is also a first reading from the Plan Commission. Alderperson Caravello.
And this is ordinance 13 of 2024, ordinance adding section 51, re-inspection fee charges.
Sorry. So essentially, this is re-inspection fees against for violating ordinances, regulations, and it's going to be applied more for when a written citation isn't working. Use this in other areas, and it is effective. It essentially goes against the property, not necessarily who should we give it to. So then it is billed against the property, and it actually goes on taxes generally. From there, we're very fortunate here. I can only think of one case that we would use this in, but it's nice having it. So just more of an FYI.
All right. Any questions on this one? Otherwise, we'll be seeing this one here at the next meeting. We'll move on to the next one, which is R37 of 2025. This one also came from the Plan Commission.
And this is R37 of 2025, approving a conditional use permit for an apartment project located at 2605 Cromwell Court, Lot 27. Parcel number 0510014127772 and 2500 Jackson Street, the rear portion of Lot 15. Parcel number 0510014105152, Kettle Park West, Stoughton, Wisconsin, and I so move.
You nailed it. Whew. Is there a second?
Second with
better.
8675309.
You got it.
All right. Alderperson Caravello.
And this is actually I guess I would call it a resubmittal, because this was originally approved in 2023 for this extensive project at this location.
Yep. Any questions or comments? It looks like Connor's here tonight for this one. Anything you want to add, or are you guys ready to start, or what's going on? Not to put you on the spot or anything.
No, I was going to say, if he's going to read Mr. Carvel is going to read the parcel number, you have to approve it. That's a lot of work. But yeah, we're excited to move it forward. I know there was a question about parkland dedication. I think that, approving it this evening conditioned upon that makes total sense. And we've made a lot of good progress in the last couple weeks on solving that one. We'd like to have a meeting with the city and the adjacent Dvorak property owners, which kind of all ties to that piece. But in general, we're excited about moving this project ahead and providing another housing type to the Kettle Park West neighborhood.
Yeah, so just a quick note on that. So we had included a closed session tonight our potential closed session for discussing an amendment to the Kettle Park West Phase 2 agreement. There's not a need for that tonight. Like Connor said, we are still working out some details on the parkland dedication piece, which kind of ties into Oak Opening Drive extension. So there are ongoing discussions. So that one's not ready for prime time tonight. But the conditional use permit, at least, that could be approved, I guess, subject to what I said about the last conditional use permit. And the condition is basically I believe it's included in the resolution that there has to be some solution for parkland dedication. So they wouldn't be able to actually commence the project until they've dedicated the required parkland, which we're working on that solution.
All right, any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Any opposed? None opposed, that motion carries. Thanks, we'll be in touch.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Good. All right, so item 15 is Attorney Matthew said we have no need for that, so that saves us a little time. Item 16 is discussion and possible action regarding the J.T. Klein tax incremental financing request. And you said there's some new rules for going into closed session. I don't know if we have a need to go into closed session. We have guests here that might want to speak.
I can just sort of set the stage. So last time we talked about this, we sort of got some principles from the council about the TIF request. So basically there was direction about a $5.375 million tax increment financing amount. The developer was to provide all relevant financial information, including the pro forma submitted to WIDA, diligently seek external funding sources, including state tax credits, and then include a look-back provision that would reduce the TIF commitment based on if there are new revenue sources or a decrease in expenses. So there have been back and forth with the developer over the last few weeks. I think there's general agreement on the total incentive amount, and the look back provision is generally okay on the dollar for dollar basis. There's I guess the developers declined to provide the WIDA workbook that Ellers requested, and there's some disagreement over the this is getting complicated, but into the amount of the deferred developer fee for the project. So that Ellers can maybe speak more to that, but the developer is here they requested the chance to speak to the council directly tonight to sort of explain their request and the rationale for, I think dollars wise, we've got agreement there. It's just the deferred developer's fee affects the amount of time that it's sort of back end fee that gets paid as the project cash flows. And I'm sure they'll correct me on everything I'm saying here that's wrong. So as the project cash flows, the deferred developer's fee gets paid out. So the more that's deferred, the longer the payout schedule is for them, versus the more that's upfront on the deal, which gets paid out at closing. It means the repayment schedule is fewer years because of the cash flow of the project. And that's very simple terms. So Ellers is recommending a look back based on a 70% deferred developer's fee, and the developer is requesting a 50% deferred developer's fee. So that's sort of where things stand right now. And I guess the developer is here tonight to address the council directly if you guys want to. basically say why everything I just said is wrong. And
All right. Well, thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Kevin O'Donnell. I'm with JT Klein Development. Wanted to kind of come back. Obviously, discussions have continued. We've progressed, on certain topics, trying to basically weed out information or differences that we're showing currently. Tonight, I have Joe Schumo with me, who's been working with Attorney Manthe, just kind of working through some of these details. And as I mentioned, they've kind of been progressing on these details, so I'll let him kind of take and give an introduction.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. I'm Joe Schumo. I'm an attorney with Reinhardt. I do affordable housing work throughout the country, so it's really nice to be in my home county. I never get to go to meetings, they're not near me, so this is so fun. So thanks for having me here. And in addition to being a lawyer, I also teach affordable housing. I've done that at UW, but also currently doing it with Denver University. So, ask me questions. I'm here for that too. So that's kind of my intro.
Yep.
Do more to go.
I can kind of dive in as far as discussing some of the items that we have here. Rick, I know you mentioned just, items that we were bringing up as far as items we were discussing that we would approve or items that we would not take care of. The WIDA workbook, I think, has kind of been one of our talking points, is the fact that we did actually decide not to submit our application for the 4% state credits. Part of that is kind of weighing the options of, the type of development, and then ultimately not having the approving for 80% of the committed sources that are required for the application.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I should have said, I also used to be the in-house counsel at WIDA, so the state allocator of the credits. Had we submitted, the applications were due. They're due once a year. They were due. Had we submitted without the TIF award, which we didn't have, we would have had to do one of two things. We would have had to lie to WIDA and say that we had the TIF, and they might have found out from you, kind people. Or we would submit, and they would dig into the file deep, spend a lot of time on it, and then find out, you don't have 80% of your sources. That's a threshold issue. You're kicked out. And then they'd be mad, too. So it's not that we're, hiding the ball or something. We couldn't. We would have angered WIDA or lied to WIDA, which we're not willing to do. So we didn't have a choice there. And because we didn't submit the WIDA workbook showing an allocation of state credits, we told Ellers, there's no reason to give you an Excel file with a bunch of things that are wrong, that are not real. They're fake. The state credits are not coming. So that's why we declined to provide that.
Yeah, okay, absolutely. Differences, I think just kind of touching base on a few of the other items. Deferred developer fee, obviously, I don't think there's any difference that we have on that. I think Rick did a good job describing that. Ellers made the recommendation that 70% of the developer fee would be deferred up front. That is not something we are willing to do. 50% is kind of that threshold. And again, as Joe can contribute to, is the fact that that is something that the city of Madison makes a standard typically is
Yeah, I'll
that
jump in
50%.
here, actually.
Yeah.
70% is like a wild request. I mean, and Rick City Attorney Manthe can tell you when he delivered that news, I'm just like, I'm nice, I'm relaxed. I had like a meltdown. It's like 70% is so dramatically out of market, especially in a situation where I'm here to tell you, the look back that the City Attorney Manthe has chiseled me down on is the best around. I just negotiated a deal this week with the City of La Crosse. They don't have the look back you have. We, first of all, on that deal, we basically have $2 million of cushion plus another 100,000 before there would be any look back. And then when the look back kicks in, it's 50%. Yours is dollar for dollar on the very first dollar. So it's a much better deal than anyone else is requiring anywhere in the state. So good job. And we're willing to do it too. But where we're at is we gave what we thought was a very fair deal. And then the response was, oh, and by the way, we're also going to ask you to tick your deferred developer fee up to 70%, higher than tax credit investors will allow us to go. They have a standard. They want to see you around 50%, higher than WIDA requires. WIDA wants you at 50%. So the idea that we should come in at 70% is dramatically out of market. And would jeopardize our ability to get a tax credit investor.
Okay, a couple quick questions. So are you still, you're not getting WIDA tax credits, are you getting federal tax credits, or are these individual tax?
That's a good question. There are three different buckets of tax credits. There's 4% federal credits, 4% state credits, and then 9% federal credits, right? So there's like these three buckets. We're still going for tax credits, just not the state tax credits.
And then, practically speaking, what is the difference between the 50% and the 70% deferred developer fee? What does it really come down to?
Sure. It's a great question, too. So, City Attorney Manthe did a great job explaining it. I think I have no corrections. You did great. So, on a tax credit deal, the developer fee, on a market rate deal, the developer fee is what it is. The developer gets paid up front, and you're done. On a tax credit deal, that's not how it works. The tax credit deal takes the developer fee, cuts it in half, and says half of it you get paid up front, like a market rate deal, and the other half you have to earn over time. If you don't earn it, at the end of the day, at the end of 15 years, you have to write a check, give it out of your left pocket and put it into your right pocket. That might sound fine, except that it's taxable when it goes into your right pocket. So you take $100,000 and you get it back as $60,000. So no one wants to do that. You want to very much avoid ever having that issue. And as a result, investors don't like to see your developer fee be too high. The deferred fee gets paid out of cash flow from time to time. If the deferred fee's been paid, then the proceeds are used to either pay down other debt that you have, soft debt, or it's distributed to the investor and to the managing member here, JT Klein. So functionally, like net, where are we? You're really taking cash flow that would otherwise come to you and saying, no, that's part of your developer fee. So the way we're viewing it is we'd like to get paid really 50% of the developer fee. And Ellers is saying, no, we want you to get 30% of that same number. And that 20% is a big difference. Now, yeah, it gets paid ultimately, but we would get that anyway. It's just recharacterizing our cash flow as developer fee. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so none of that money would actually come back to pay off the TIF.
None of the cash flow?
Yeah, the deferred fee.
No,
strictly money
yeah.
you're going to get, and it's a question of when, how much when you get it, and whether it's taxed at that point or not.
Correct.
Okay.
If the cash flow allows for it. So if that property actually performs well enough, the cash flow allows for it, that's when it'll get paid.
Okay, that helps me understand that. Does anybody have any questions on that? I know it's getting in the weeds a little bit. But
Super
that's
in the
what we
weeds,
do.
yeah, apologies.
No, that was a good explanation.
kind of hard not to get into the weeds on some of these items we're obviously discussing. And
Sure. No, we appreciate that. Anything else on your list, Kevin, or was that pretty much it?
I think that's kind of the bulk of back and forth what we've had discussion-wise. I certainly think if there's any points that you want to add or...
Yeah, I mean, basically the TIF amount, like we've got the look back structured where I think it's after occupancy, or maybe I remember the specific date, but so that's when the look back would occur. So after the project's been built, after all the sources or the revenues have been finalized for the project, so that's when we would be looking back to see, is that gap still there? So it's roughly 3.3 present value TIF amount, which leads to the 5.375 future value number at like a 6.3% interest rate. Again, talking numbers are not my strong suit, but so the deferred developer fee, and maybe Ellers can explain this as well, but it's basically how quickly they get paid on the project. So the TIF amount, it comes into play based on, I guess, the time value of money, because if you get paid faster, that's money in your pocket. You're getting it now versus later. You can reinvest it. There are other factors, right? So that's sort of the crux of where things are at is, does a developer get that deferred developer fee year 9 versus year 12 or year 15 of when it gets fully paid back? I think Eller's analysis has it, if it's 70%, it gets paid back on year 12 or 13, something like that.
All right. Anything you want to add, Shane? Shane from Ellers is on virtually.
Mayor, elders, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Great. So, yeah, so as it relates to deferred developer fees on tax credit projects, totally different than a market rate project. A market rate project developer's fee is about 3 or 4% of the project cost. In Wisconsin, WIDA allows $40,000 per unit, which is $4.8 million on this project, or 15.4 excuse me, million of the project cost at 31.2 million. But recall that the project cost used to be 32.85 million until the developer reduced that cost when we started to calculate the look back. And so that's one of the reasons why we wanted to see the WIDA workbook, is to understand what the project cost really might be. And that's a current comment that we have on the look back language, is that it's based on this lower project cost, which changes the math on how the look back is calculated. Typically, we wouldn't get this far down the road on a look back at all. We do a project cost look back typically, and we don't get embroiled in the sources. But because of the long history in this project and changing project costs and changing funding sources, we've gone down this road with this more complicated look back. So it's not typical to do that here, but because of the history of this one, we've had this long conversation about this. So bigger developer's fee on tax credit projects like this, paid out over a period of time, and with that lower project cost at 31.2 million instead of the 32.85, that payback of the developer's fee is between the 10 and 15 years, which is typical in the industry. Yes, developer's fee, deferred portions of developer's fee, in a perfect world are 50%, and they get paid back in around 10 years. But we Ellers see that deferred developer's fee up to 100% in Wisconsin on current projects that we're working on today. So it's certainly not out of market to see that. It's certainly not ideal for the developer, but it does reduce the commitment from the city or the village, depending on what kind of jurisdiction you're in. So the deal, I think, is really for the council to consider. If they want to do a tax credit project with this type of affordability, the way the deal is currently structured, the 3.3 million in present value, excuse me, I got a cold today, but is done with math that we Ellers don't use. Our present value is actually a little bit lower, but if the developer can take that same cash stream and get 3.3 million for it, so be it. I think some of those details will get worked out in the developer's agreement. I don't think that we need to worry about the difference between 3.3 and 3.1. It all comes down to how the words end up in the developer's agreement and what the MRO note says. Those numbers can be different. So with that, we went through the principles and objectives last time. I'm happy to go through those again, but I think you really have a decision tonight. If you want this project as currently structured, you're very unlikely to get any change into the commitment number of TIF, and or if you can go back to the principles that we talked about last time and see if the developer wants to move forward under that guise. But it's really a fork in the road, I think, as the developer has presented it.
Anything else you guys want to say before we either take action or go into closed session?
Yeah, one couple things. I've probably done close to, I would think, 500 or 600 tax credit deals. I've never once seen 100% deferred developer fee. That sounds like a really unhealthy deal. So the idea that is market is not true. And the project costs, I don't know what they are today. We don't have a contract signed. The project costs will, whatever they are today, they will be different in a week. And we're not like breaking ground tomorrow. They will change. That's the whole point of the look back. You're completely protected. That's the point. So what we need at this point, Shane's right, we need pencils down. We just need to know, are you in or you're out? And we have to know if we're moving forward with this execution or if you don't want to do it. And, so give us an up or down vote. I hope it's up. This is a good project, and you're getting a better deal than anywhere else I've seen anywhere in Wisconsin, okay? So I think it's good for the city of Stoughton, and it works for us. So we're willing to do it. So I do hope you support it, but we need to know kind of where you stand and move forward. We'd like you to vote on it. Yeah.
We need to know that as well. And we appreciate you guys working through to this point with us. It's been a journey.
It has.
I think we can
yeah.
agree to that, and I think we are getting to a decision point. So thanks again for being here.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so what do you recommend here, Rick?
So I guess it's up to the council. We have the option to go into closed session. So if the council feels like it's required to go into closed session for negotiation, bargaining reasons, a motion could be made to that effect. If you want to just make a decision now about which direction you want to go, we could have that discussion or that decision point right now. So I guess it's up to the council which direction it wants to go.
Either way, somebody has to make a motion. How's that sound? So
Sure.
really, either the motion would be to move forward and then fill in the blanks, which is basically the deferred developer fee amount, or it would be to go into closed session, basically, right?
Right. I mean, basically, moving forward with JT Klein's proposal, or we go into closed session to discuss it further to get direction on which way the city wants to go.
This is where I get to say, what is the pleasure of the council? Alderperson Abel.
I think it would be, I don't know if we have to do this in closed session, but it would be helpful to understand like an outline of what we would be voting on, like what the deal currently stands is and what we would be voting on.
Yeah, so I guess the summary would be, there's been a term sheet that we've sort of been going back and forth, and I have not provided it tonight because we didn't have things finalized for it, but I guess overall broad strokes terms of the deal would be a $5.375 million TIF incentive future value with $3.3 million present value. So we'll just say 5.375 future value with a dollar for dollar look back, where if they have increased revenues or decreased expenses where their gap is shortened from what they're presenting today, then that TIF amount would be reduced at a dollar for dollar basis. I guess the kicker is the deferred developer fee, so they're requesting a 50% deferred developer fee. So that's the proposal in broad strokes. Is that thumbs up? Sure.
I think this might be helpful, and maybe it's too far in the weeds. This might be helpful, it might be too far in the weeds, but the deferred developer fee, when we talk about a tax credit deal, we look at the sources and uses, right? And this is a little bit of a mind warp. The deferred developer fee is a source. Think of it as a use, right? It's developer fee. You're paying it. It's a source. So, as City Attorney Manthey mentioned, the real rub is, say there's $100,000 of shortened gap. If the gap gets bigger, that's on us. We're not coming back and asking for money. But if the gap gets smaller, what do we do with the 100,000 in my example? If our deferred developer fee is 50%, then all of it goes to reduce TIF. If the deferred developer fee is 70%, we would say it should first go, the 100,000 should first go to reduce our developer fee just to, deferred fee, just to 50%, and let the rest of that get paid out of cash flow. And Ellers, I don't want to speak for Shane, but I think I've got this right, Shane can correct me. Ellers would say, no, if you're at 70% deferred developer fee, that 100,000 should go to reduce TIF. If you're at 80% deferred developer fee, then you can pay it down to 70%. So I think that's, I don't know if that's helpful, but I think that's that's the only difference really, is where does the TIF payback start?
Yeah, and that's if it even comes into play, right? Yes. There's no guarantee that that scenario will play out.
Right. We don't model it.
We hope it doesn't. Anything you want to add, Shane?
I mean, again, the council doesn't have the term sheet specifics to vote on tonight, which are important. And, we're still working through those. And again, I think it's more of a policy decision. I think for the developer, they need to know if they've got the council support of up to 5.37 million and where the deferred developer fee kicks in. And I don't, unless we get into the weeds on that, which we can do and talk through it if you want. I just don't know exactly how you move forward without understanding those pieces of the puzzle. And so I'm at a little bit of a loss as to how to advise the council as to move forward, because some of those are still outstanding. And I think Joe just mentioned that, what we're talking about is a cost that we don't know today, and which is totally true. We don't know the funding sources and uses, hence the complicated look back. But the way the look back is currently worded, and I don't know if that's intentional or unintentional, it's based on the cost that exists in an exhibit today, which is again the lower project cost, which then changes all the math. And so ideally we have a few more days to really work on that and then present an outline of the term sheet to the council, but I know we don't have that luxury today, so I'm just thinking out loud here. But we're not opposed. We Ellers do deals all the way on the spectrum between 50 and, again, I said on 100%. I know that's not ideal. I'm not saying that's normal, and I agree with Joe that that's not the best deal in the world, but it is a deal that is happening. But again, we'd like to see it 50, but we also like to provide TIF assistance with minimal inflation and at as low years as is possible, so that it's the best deal for the government side of things. And that's what we're in the business of doing, is trying to get the best deal for cities and villages. And so with that, I'm not exactly sure what I'm saying. That's a little bit more background. But yeah, I don't know if there's a motion, something the extent of details to be provided, or if the developer needs to know that specificity sitting here today, then I'm not sure. I think you just need to make a decision based on what you know today. Otherwise, we can go into closed section and talk more in detail about it.
All right, any questions or comments? Go ahead.
Can you guys speak to what other sources of funding you guys are exploring now that you're not doing WIDA?
So combination, I think even part of what we've shared obviously is all the sources that we can go through. So, I mean, if you had questions on specific sources as far as like the affordability side of things, we have shared all of those with us here, with everyone here. And to that extent, we're at that point where we've exhausted almost all the sources that are possible for this project as far as applications, funding. But we have shared all those different avenues, those source avenues. To go through the actual dollar amounts or the actual source location would probably be best to, run through in that situation. But I don't know if you have anything
Yeah, I
you
mean,
want to touch base
so
on.
we, there are tax credits. So the 4% kind of non-competitive. This has Dane County.
Dane County Affordable Housing Funds, which is a competitive application process we were awarded this last cycle.
And then we would hope TIF, deferred developer fee, and
we did go through the process of Federal Home Loan Bank for funds, but we unfortunately did not get it for this, because scoring-wise it didn't competitively meet the criteria. Outside of that, yeah, TIF.
Yeah, so I think really, the risk for the council is, if you feel really strongly about getting the workforce housing, there's a deal on the table. If you think you can get a better deal, there's no guarantee, because the next one might not be able to get the Dane County money for sure. The federal money, I think, is not competitive, so anybody can get that. But, we'd basically be starting all over and losing several months, if not a construction season in the process, which will hurt the numbers as well. So that's kind of where I'm at, but the decision's up to you guys, what you want to do.
You could make if you'd like to go into closed session, there would need to be a motion, and then we could discuss it.
Motion. Is it in the agenda?
Yeah, it's on the bottom of the agenda.
All right, the Common Council may convene in closed session per state statute 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. The Common Council may reconvene in an open session to discuss and take action on the subject matter discussed in the closed session. And I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Schumacher, and we'll need a roll call vote.
Okay, Butler.
Aye.
Lagaki. Aye. Bosniak Scanlon. Aye. Schumacher.
Aye.
Peyton. Oh, I'm sorry, I have them on here. Caravello.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
Abel.
Aye.
Mayaski.
Aye.
Okay.
Sure lucky.
Aye.
Or maybe I'll ask Chris.
Okay, we have 9 alders in favor.
All right, we'll take 5 and then we'll go into closed session.
A tunnel under 51.
Back in open session, they have us streaming live again. So who would like to make a motion here?
I'd like to make a motion to go forward with this company in our negotiations and to allow the mayor to enter into a non-binding term sheet with the details that we disclosed before at a total of $5.37 million. Also, looking forward that more details would be done in the developer's agreement, and that in this mayor's authorization that he utilizes approval from both review and recommendations from, review and approval of the city attorney and Ellers.
All right. Is there a second? Second by Mayeski. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Lagaki, is there a second?
Second.
Jensen.
Jensen seconded. Gene, you only have one more meeting as well.
Me and Tom, man, we got it.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned.